a warm afternoon, the crowd had gathered, buzzing with restless anticipation. Among them stood Jasmine Crockett, a woman known for her voice, her courage, and her defiance in the face of injustice. But what was meant to be a moment of dignity quickly unraveled into something far more cruel. As the whispers grew louder and the stares sharpened, humiliation was hurled at her like stones. Yet just as the weight of disgrace seemed unbearable, something unexpected rolled into view, a gleaming Rolls-Royce that would turn shame into power. Jasmine Crockett had faced public judgment before, but this time was different. She wasn't standing on a debate stage or behind a microphone. She was in the open, vulnerable, surrounded by people whose eyes carried not curiosity, but contempt. Her presence had sparked whispers of defiance, and in certain circles, her very existence was seen as a challenge. That afternoon in the heart of the city, she was cast out from a gathering that should have been neutral ground. The reason was unspoken, but all too familiar: her identity, her politics, and the unyielding fire that made some uncomfortable. Their humiliation was deliberate, carefully orchestrated to strip her of dignity in public view. Gasps echoed as the scene unfolded, with onlookers torn between discomfort and silent approval. Jasmine, however, stood her ground even as the moment burned. She had known struggle before, and though this incident pierced deep, she refused to bow to shame. And then, as if the world itself had decided enough was enough, the sound of an engine broke through the tension. The low, commanding purr of a machine too powerful to ignore. It wasn't just a car, it was a statement, and it carried her husband's unwavering support. The air shifted, heads turned, conversations halted. A sleek Rolls-Royce, polished to perfection, glided down the street and pulled up beside her. It wasn't merely a vehicle. It was an emblem of resilience, of triumph in the face of disdain. The very crowd that moments earlier had mocked her now found themselves silenced, caught between awe and discomfort. The same voices that had whispered judgment now spoke in hushed tones about wealth, power, and influence. For many, the Rolls-Royce was more than just luxury. It was proof that Jasmine was not the figure of ridicule they tried to paint, but a woman whose presence demanded respect. But the humiliation lingered in the air like smoke. What happened to Jasmine wasn't erased by polished chrome and leather seats. This wasn't about cars or wealth. It was about the deeper truth of how public humiliation is often weaponized against women of color. Jasmine knew this well. For years, she had seen how society used double standards to break those who dared, to speak differently, live differently, and stand defiantly against the norm. Her humiliation that day wasn't an isolated event. It was part of a pattern where strength was punished and silence was rewarded. Yet the Rolls-Royce's arrival shifted the power dynamic. In a society obsessed with appearances, the car became a shield, forcing the crowd to reconsider their judgment. Suddenly, the same people who had sneered looked again, this time with envy, perhaps even begrudging admiration. Still, Jasmine did not smile. She did not revel in their change of heart. She understood something deeper, that respect earned by material wealth was fragile, temporary, and conditional. What she sought was not their envy, but a reckoning with truth, a recognition of the injustice she had just endured. The scene transformed into something symbolic, humiliation turning into a display of strength, but also exposing the hypocrisy of a society that respects power only when it shines in luxury. As Jasmine stepped toward the car, the crowd parted reluctantly, their eyes following her every move. For a brief moment, it was as if time slowed. The woman they had dismissed, cast out, and ridiculed now commanded the space simply by existing within it. The Rolls-Royce's door opened, a gesture of quiet support from her husband inside. The machine stood not as a trophy, but as a reminder that she was not alone. That behind her was not only personal strength, but also solidarity, love, and the resources to fight back against a world eager to tear her down. And then came the turning point. As Jasmine paused before stepping inside, she lifted her head and scanned the crowd. No words were spoken, yet the silence she left behind was deafening. She didn't need to defend herself, nor retaliate with anger. Her presence alone, paired with the unmistakable symbol of resilience beside her, was enough to dismantle the sting of humiliation. In that instant, the crowd's gaze shifted. Some looked away in shame. Others stood frozen, unable to reconcile the cruelty they had just partaken in with the power now radiating from the woman they thought they could belittle. The Rolls-Royce pulled away, its reflection gliding across glass windows as if to etch the moment into the city itself. Jasmine sat quietly, not in triumph but in reflection. The incident wasn't about revenge or silencing critics. It was about exposing a painful truth. That respect, too often, is given not to the dignity of a person, but to the possessions they carry. The humiliation she endured was real. The sting of injustice lingered. Yet the scene had flipped because society bends under the weight of power and prestige. And that reality is a tragedy of its own. For Jasmine, the Rolls-Royce was never the point. The point was resilience. The idiot refusal to let public shame define her worth. What had been intended to crush her spirit had only reinforced her resolve. The world saw a spectacle. She experienced a lesson. And for those who witnessed it, the image remained. A woman wronged, but not defeated. A community revealed for its biases, yet unable to look away from the strength that emerged in the aftermath. The story leaves us with a question that lingers long after the car has vanished from sight. Why must dignity be validated by symbols of wealth instead of being honored in its purest form? Perhaps the next time we see injustice play out in public, the lesson of Jasmine Crockett will echo, reminding us that humiliation may be loud, but resilience speaks louder still.